The Water Boy was a very important reemergence for me. You know, when I finished the Fonz, I could not get hired really as an actor.
Right.
This was a very important.
If you grew up watching Happy Days, you probably thought Henry Winkler and Ron Howard were the ultimate duo, Fonzie and Richie, the coolest best friends on screen. For years, rumors have swirled about tension between Henry Winkler and Ron Howard. Some claimed they were best buddies, others whispered about jealousy and drama, but neither of them ever really addressed it, until now. Henry Winkler has finally broken his silence on his relationship with Ron Howard. So, what's the real story? Stay tuned, because by the end of this video, you'll be getting all your answers fully. Let's get into it. The early days of an unlikely friendship. Isn't it funny how life just throws people together in the most unexpected ways? That's exactly what happened when Henry Winkler and Ron Howard crossed paths on the set of Happy Days back in 1974. Here were two guys from completely different worlds. Winkler, the polished, theater-trained actor from New York with a Yale drama degree, and Howard, the small-town Oklahoma kid who had practically grown up on TV sets. If you had placed bets on who would hit it off, they probably wouldn't have been your first pick. But somehow, against all odds, they clicked. And not just in a "we work well together" kind of way, but in a deep, lasting friendship that has stood the test of time. Isn't it crazy how the right people just find each other? The first time Winkler and Howard met was on the Happy Days set, and from that moment, their on-screen chemistry was undeniable. They played Arthur Fonzie Fonzarelli and Richie Cunningham, two characters who couldn't have been more different. Fonzie was the ultimate cool guy, the leather jacket-wearing, motorcycle-riding rebel, while Richie was the wholesome, clean-cut Midwest boy. But somehow, their dynamic just worked. And it wasn't just good acting, it was something deeper. Winkler once said, "You dream for a chemistry with your fellow actor, and either it's there or it's not." And for them? Oh, it was definitely there. They could power through 3-page scenes in just 20 minutes, moving in perfect sync, almost like they were reading each other's minds. That kind of connection doesn't just happen. It's rare, almost magical. You'd think two of the most beloved stars from Happy Days would have nothing but great things to say about each other, right? Well, think again. For years, rumors have swirled about Henry Winkler and Ron Howard's real relationship behind the scenes. Were they best buddies, or was there a secret rivalry nobody knew about? Now, after staying quiet for decades, Henry Winkler is finally telling his side of the story. And let's just say, it's not what anyone expected. So, grab a seat and stick with us, because this is one story you don't want to miss. Now, you'd think with their 9-year age gap, Winkler being born in 1945 and Howard in 1954, it might have been hard for them to relate to each other, but it was the complete opposite. Howard had been acting since he was a kid on The Andy Griffith Show, and he had this incredible wisdom beyond his years. Winkler, on the other hand, despite his formal training, was still finding his footing in Hollywood. And yet, he saw something special in Howard right away, calling him an old soul and saying, "There's a wisdom in him that is big." You know how some people just seem to have lived 100 lives even when they're young? That was Ron Howard. And Winkler, despite being older, respected him so much for that. One of the real turning points in their relationship happened early on. Winkler, being the passionate actor that he was, got frustrated during rehearsals one day and started punching his script out of anger. But instead of making a big deal about it or calling him out in front of everyone, Howard, who was younger, quietly took him aside and told him, "That's not the way to go." He reminded him that the writers were doing their best, that everyone was working hard, and that blowing up like that wasn't fair. And you know what? Winkler listened. He promised Howard he'd never do that again, and he kept his word. That right there says so much about their dynamic. And it wasn't just about working together. Their bond went way beyond the set. Winkler always spoke highly of Howard's upbringing, saying he learned a lot just from being around him. He saw how grounded Howard was, thanks to his parents, and it really stuck with him. Even after Happy Days ended, and they both moved on to different careers, Howard becoming one of the most respected directors in Hollywood, and Winkler carving out his own impressive path in acting and producing, their friendship never wavered. They always had each other's backs, always stayed in touch, always cheered each other on. When the Fonz changed everything. When Happy Days first hit television screens, no one could have predicted just how much things would change once Henry Winkler's character, Arthur the Fonz Fonzarelli, stole the audience's hearts. Sure, the show was supposed to be about Richie Cunningham and his wholesome all-American life. But once the Fonz stepped on screen, things took a different turn. And you know what? The shift didn't just happen behind closed doors. It was loud, clear, and impossible to ignore. The real turning point came in Season 2, Episode 13, when the show started filming in front of a live studio audience for the first time. And let's just say, the audience couldn't get enough of Fonzie. The cheers, the energy, the excitement, it was electric. And from that moment on, ABC knew exactly where the gold was buried. The Fonz wasn't just a side character anymore. He was the show's beating heart. Now, by the beginning of Season 2, Happy Days wasn't doing so hot in the ratings. And you know how network executives get when numbers start dropping. Panic mode, desperation, big, sweeping changes. And that's exactly what ABC did. They reworked the show, giving Fonzie more screen time, deepening his character, and making sure he was front and center in almost every episode. But it wasn't just about making him the tough leather jacket-wearing rebel that people loved. They gave him depth. He was still the cool guy, but now he had heart, a soft spot, a backstory that made people connect with him beyond just his smooth one-liners and effortless charm. And let's be real, this gamble paid off. Happy Days shot straight to the top, becoming television's #1 program in the 1976-1977 season. It was everywhere. And Henry Winkler? Oh, he was a full-blown superstar now. But not everyone was on board with this idea. Winkler himself didn't want it, and neither did Ron Howard. And for Ron, this wasn't just about keeping the original title, it was about respect. He saw the writing on the wall. He knew what was happening behind the scenes, and he felt the shift in how the network was treating him. Suddenly, he wasn't the golden boy anymore. Despite all these issues, Howard was a professional. He handled it well, publicly at least. He admitted that, yes, the show had shifted toward Fonzie, but he insisted he still had great parts. Behind the scenes, though, that was a different story. It hurt. It stung. It made him angry. But here's where things get interesting. Henry Winkler wasn't blind to any of this. He saw what was happening. He knew the shift was affecting Howard, and he tried his best to keep things peaceful. "I was very aware never to be less than respectful to him," Winkler later said. "I was always careful never to flaunt anything that was happening to me on the soundstage in front of the cast members." And you know what? That's probably a big reason why their friendship survived, because things could have gotten messy, really messy. But Winkler wasn't trying to steal the spotlight. He was just playing the character people fell in love with. Let's be honest, Happy Days wouldn't have been the same without Henry Winkler and Ron Howard. They were the heart of the show. the dynamic duo that made millions tune in every week. But what if I told you there was more to their relationship than just friendly banter and classic sitcom moments? For years, whispers have suggested that things weren't always so happy behind the scenes. And now, for the first time, Henry Winkler is setting the record straight. So sit tight, because once you hear what he has to say, you'll never look at Happy Days the same way again. The truth about their relationship. You know how sometimes the media just loves to stir the pot and make a big deal out of nothing? Well, that's exactly what happened when rumors started swirling that Henry Winkler and Ron Howard had some kind of falling out after all these years. Can you imagine? These two guys, who basically defined friendship goals on Happy Days, suddenly being at odds? It just didn't make sense. But of course, the headlines ran wild with it, and people started speculating like crazy. Were there jealousies? Did fame drive a wedge between them? Was there some long-held grudge from the Happy Days era? Everyone wanted the tea. But when Winkler and Howard finally set the record straight, their story turned out to be something completely different. Something way deeper, way more genuine, and honestly, kind of heartwarming. So here's what actually happened. Winkler, in his usual straightforward and good-natured way, came right out and said that there was never any beef. In fact, he's always been super conscious about making sure he treated Howard with nothing but respect. Can we just take a second to appreciate how rare that is in Hollywood? Ego clashes happen all the time, especially when one actor starts getting more attention than the other. But Winkler? He made it a point to never let any of his success as the Fonz create weirdness between them. Of course, the rumors didn't die down easily, especially after Howard himself opened up about some of the behind-the-scenes struggles he faced during Happy Days. Apparently, ABC wasn't exactly subtle about who they favored. Picture this. Every year, the network gave Christmas gifts to the cast. Seems nice, right? But get this. While the other actors got simple wallets, Winkler was handed an expensive videotape player. Ouch! If that doesn't scream favoritism, I don't know what does. And Howard? He felt it. He admitted that while he knew Winkler wasn't doing anything wrong, the way the studio treated them differently stung. And you know what's so refreshing? Instead of holding it in and letting resentment build up, Howard actually talked to Winkler about it. He straight up told him, "You're not letting this go to your head or changing who you are. You're a great team player. What you've created is incredible for the show. But if I'm honest, I have to say it does hurt my feelings. More than that, it's made me angry at times." Can you imagine having that level of honesty in a friendship? No passive aggressiveness, no silent grudges, just raw, real feelings being communicated. And Winkler? He listened. He understood. And that's probably a huge reason why their friendship never cracked under the pressure. 50 years of friendship. The 2024 Emmy Awards gave everyone a heartwarming blast from the past when Henry Winkler and Ron Howard reunited in a moment that felt straight out of a classic Happy Days episode. And honestly, could it have been any more perfect? There they were, standing in a carefully recreated Arnold's Drive-In, dressed in sleek black suits, looking like they had just time-traveled straight from the 1970s. The second they stepped onto that set, the audience knew they were in for something special. It wasn't just about nostalgia. It was about 50 years of friendship, of a bond that had never faded. You know how some friendships just pick up right where they left off, no matter how much time has passed? That was exactly what this moment felt like. As soon as Howard looked around the set, he couldn't help but smile. "This is fantastic," he said, clearly taking it all in. And Winkler? With that same warmth that made him one of TV's most beloved characters, he nodded and added, "Feels like home." And honestly, it did. The set designers had nailed every single detail. Sports pennants lining the walls, red leather booths, a vintage high-fidelity jukebox glowing in the corner, even a classic pinball machine sitting off to the side, as if waiting for the Fonz to give it a go. It was like stepping back in time, and for those who grew up watching Happy Days, it was pure magic. But what made this moment even more touching wasn't just the set or the nostalgia. It was the way these two men still had so much love and admiration for each other. Winkler took a second to hype up Howard's latest achievement, proudly sharing with the audience that his very good friend for 50 years had just won an Emmy at the Creative Arts Emmys for his documentary, Jim Henson Idea Man. And the way he said it, you could tell he wasn't just saying it because they were on stage together. He meant it. He was genuinely proud, like a friend who's been cheering you on from the sidelines for decades, never once letting jealousy or competition get in the way. That's rare, isn't it? In Hollywood, where egos can get out of control and friendships sometimes fizzle the second the cameras stop rolling, these two have stuck together through it all. But perhaps the most touching part of the entire reunion was what Winkler said about their chemistry. "We're at the Emmys. We had 45 seconds. They said, 'Action.' And that chemistry came like a thunderbolt, right into that space." And that's exactly what it felt like. Instant, effortless, like no time had passed at all. Some friendships are just like that. They don't need constant check-ins or grand gestures. They just exist, solid and unshakable, through every high and low. So, what did we learn from this Emmy reunion? That friendships like Howard and Winkler's don't just happen every day. That real connections, the kind that stand the test of time, are rare and worth celebrating. And maybe, just maybe, that Happy Days weren't just on TV, they were very real for the people who made them. For decades, fans thought they knew the truth about Henry Winkler and Ron Howard's bond. But now, Henry Winkler is breaking his silence, and what he's saying changes everything. Did success create a divide between them? Or was their friendship never as strong as we thought? The truth is game-changing. And the biggest revelations? They're coming up, so don't go anywhere. Impact on their personal lives. Henry Winkler and Ron Howard's friendship isn't just a Hollywood thing. It's the kind of bond that goes beyond red carpets and TV screens. One of the biggest signs of their deep connection is the fact that Ron Howard made Henry Winkler the godfather to his daughter, Bryce Dallas Howard. That's not a small thing. Choosing someone to be a godparent means you trust them to be there for your child, to guide them, to love them like their own. And Henry? He took that role seriously. But their bond didn't stop there. Over the years, as they built their own families, their lives naturally intertwined even more. Ron Howard married his wife, Cheryl Alley, in 1975, and Henry Winkler married Stacy Weitzman in 1978. Their marriages weren't just Hollywood flings. They were real, solid partnerships, the kind that last through decades. And as their kids grew up, they all became part of the same extended family. The Howards had 4 kids, while Henry and Stacy had 2 of their own, plus a stepson. And if you think about it, their kids grew up knowing each other in a way that most people in Hollywood don't get to experience. It wasn't just about the fame, it was about real relationships, real memories, real family ties. Henry has always been open about the struggles he faced growing up, especially with dyslexia. He didn't even find out he had dyslexia until he was 31. That's after he had already made it big on Happy Days. He once said, "I spent most of my adult life being frightened, on the outside looking like I had it together, and mostly being anxious." That's heavy. But guess who was there to help him through those tough times? Ron Howard. When Henry and his wife were trying to figure out why their son, Jed, was struggling in school, it led to Henry's own diagnosis. That moment must have been a mix of relief and heartbreak. Relief to finally understand himself, but heartbreak knowing he had struggled alone for so long. But having friends like Ron, people who truly cared about him beyond the Hollywood glitz, made all the difference. And their friendship wasn't just about the big emotional moments, it was also about the little things, the everyday stuff that builds a real bond over time. They've celebrated milestones together, cheered for each other's successes, and been there through the hard times. Just recently, they had a dinner where their families gathered, and Henry described the moment as 50 years of history, all in the same place at the same time. It was palpable. And then there's the legacy part of it. It's not just about Henry and Ron. It's about their kids and what they've built. Bryce Dallas. Howard followed in her father's footsteps and became a powerhouse in Hollywood, both as an actress and a director. Max Winkler also pursued a career in the industry. It's like the next generation is continuing what their fathers started, but in their own unique way. And through it all, Henry and Ron have remained a constant presence in each other's lives. Henry recently shared that even though Ron was filming a movie in Australia, they still talk all the time. "We are as tight as a family," he said, and you can tell he means it. This isn't just the kind of friendship where people say nice things about each other for the press. It's real. It's the kind of relationship where you pick up the phone, no matter what time it is, and know the other person will be there. And now, with Henry stepping into the role of grandfather, their families continue to grow, adding new chapters to their story. Imagine their family gatherings, so many years of memories, so many stories, probably a lot of laughter reminiscing about their Happy Days era. But more than that, it's about knowing that no matter how much time passes, no matter where their careers take them, they'll always have each other. Hollywood is full of fleeting relationships, but Henry Winkler and Ron Howard have shown that real friendships, the kind that last through decades, through ups and downs, through marriages, kids, and grandkids, do exist. Their bond is proof that some friendships aren't just friendships. They're family. And honestly, isn't that the kind of connection we all hope to have in our own lives? With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.